Hello and welcome to Funded Futures. My name is Emily, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Warwick Donaldson, who is the founder and managing director of CapXcentric. He's a fierce advocate for Australian founders and has worked on over 160 capital raises here in Australia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming in. I know you worked on so many capital raises in your time. What is a pitfall that you see founders falling into time and time again, despite all of the guidance out there?
The biggest one is around, well, just in general, just not running, not preparing for and executing capital raises correctly. At the end of the day, you're selling something. You're selling an investment to investors, and you need to know how to do that properly. And there are lots of resources out there, and there are lots of good and bad advice, and it changes for each different type of founder and the type of investment they're looking for, and the stage they're at. But I don't think that founders put enough effort into stepping back and preparing for capital raises.
And what would you say would be the best first steps when they're thinking about doing a capital raise? What is the number one thing that you should think about before going into it?
So actually I built a capital raise playbook, and that's what I use to help my clients raise capital. And the first thing that I ask them to do is reflect.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is a personal reflection, a business reflection, and then an investor reflection. So the personal reflection goes, what are you building? Why are you building this? Personally, like, why are you involved in this? Are you happy to spend the next 10 years doing this? What are your boundaries? What does success look like? What does failure look like? All these sorts of things. Just taking the time to just step back. And, because actually those questions are really important, because hopefully from those questions you will discover a whole heap of characteristics and parameters which will set up what kind of investors you should be talking to and what pathway you're going down.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you don't do that, then a lot of the time you actually end up going down the wrong pathway, talking to the wrong investors, wasting months or years trying to raise money when it doesn't fit.
Totally. And timing is really everything at the end of the day for a cap raise. It's about who are you speaking to? How much time are you spending on speaking to those investors? Are they the right investors? Are you asking for capital at the right time in your business? How do founders decide if it's the right time to raise and if they are the right investors that they're talking to and they're not just throwing their time and money down the drain?
Yeah, so you need to be aware of the current market.
Okay.
So one, like the macro economy and investors' expectations, but then also the space that you're competing within, and investors' preferences within that.
Okay.
But also your business's performance, but also you as a founder and the founding team. Are you investable? And if you're not investable right now, what do you need to do to become investable? They're really important questions.
Yeah, and I think a big question that a lot of founders fail to ask themselves is, would you invest in your own business? Would you invest in the founder and the team? And a lot of the time the answer is, maybe in a few months, maybe once we get to this milestone, I would. So why do founders find themselves trying to raise capital when they wouldn't even invest in their business at that point?
Yeah, this one's usually obvious when you're on the outside of the capital raise looking in. It's because founders are incredibly persistent, very, very persistent people. And a lot of them, when they decide to do something, they just keep going until they do it without taking a step back and just thinking about it first. So yes, I think deep down a lot of them are aware that they probably shouldn't be raising capital, but they, for whatever reason, have decided that they're going to ignore all of that and they're going to persist. I think it comes back to a lot of the narrative that gets pushed around the startup ecosystem, around all these like tales and stories of these amazing capital raises that got done when 100 investors said no, but then that one investor said yes, and now they're Facebook, right? And
a friend of a friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I totally get it.
every founder latches on to that idea that this could be them. I've been learning about this in psychology recently. It's the idea of like kind of grandiosity and all this sort of stuff of like, that where that we could be the person that changes the world. So yeah, I think
that's why people start businesses to begin with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I would never start a business. I think it takes a particular kind of person to start one. And after interviewing so many founders and working with so many and seeing how hard it is and the sleep that they're losing and the time that they put into these businesses, it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
And so many of the founders say, if I knew what I now know about starting a business, I never would have done this.
They say that, but then they go and start another one.
Yeah.
So I think that's just also one of these things where it's socially acceptable to say something like that, but then they go and start another one, or they continue on the path that they're already on.
It's like that addiction, like you get a tattoo and then you're like, I need to get another one and another one and another one.
Correct. Yeah. And I've been worked in quite a few startups myself, and then I've tried to start a few of my own, and now I've started my own. I do capital raising for a living, and it's a small business that I run. And
you've deliberately not scaled the business. Why
correct.
is that?
Because I've worked for a lot of founders and I know what's involved. And for me, I really want like work-life balance at this stage of my life.
Yeah,
I've decided to prioritize that. And yeah, I don't know founders that work, 9 to 5, kind of Monday to Friday. And whilst I don't want to work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday necessarily, I do want to have 1 or 2 days a week where my brain isn't filled full of just like obsessing over one business problem.
100%.
So yeah, that's a personal choice I've made. And as I've learned in my life, what I choose to do changes all the time, and so at another point in my life that may change again,
right.
But for now this is the decision I've made.
So you said you tried to start a few businesses.
Yes.
What were they?
So my very first one was in 2014, I think 2014, when I was like a grad, like 22, 21. I was working in a bank, and I saw this gap in the market for a fitness marketplace. In my opinion, I was like, and so I'm going to build a fitness marketplace in Australia for personal trainers, and convinced my dad to lend me like $5,000. He still asks for that $5,000.
He's got to let that go. Got to let that go. That is sunken capital. Yeah. It's over. Let it go.
Yeah, and I found a development agency in India and got them to develop the platform up, and learn a whole lot with that. That was very interesting. Anyway, the platform finally got developed up, and then it launched and nothing happened. And I was sitting there, I was like, where is everyone? And I don't know, eventually someone said, well, you've got to go out and sell. You've got to go out. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is on the internet. Like, there should just be lots of people finding it.
Surely.
And then, someone's like, no, you've got to go. You've got to go and
have you heard of marketing?
Yeah, got to go door knock and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Sure.
And so they just shut it down. That was literally it.
Okay.
That was literally it.
And now?
That was literally it. And then I sold it off for like $1,000 or something.
Okay, brilliant. Does it still exist?
No, don't think. I don't think so.
What was it called?
It's called Find Fit.
Find Fit.
Yeah.
Oh, I quite like the name.
Yeah.
The alliteration's nice.
The other thing is that I did not care at that point about health or fitness at all. Had never been involved in that area. Nothing. I just thought that there was a gap there, and I was like, I'm gonna solve it because that's what we do in business, right? I just come out of doing my business degree and just got taught that traditional business is, you're the smart person. You know what business is. You tell the people what they want. Just go and make it, and they'll buy it, right?
Right.
Nobody ever. I only discovered 5-6 years ago when I was working with some designers, this idea of like qualitative research and going out and talking to people and being engaged. Up until that point, I just thought you just send out surveys and get quantitative data and that's all you need, right?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Look, you learn more from your failures than your successes.
Yes, because I was thinking of doing an MBA at that point.
Oh, okay.
And it was far, far cheaper, you know. I think I put $5,000 of my own money in, $5,000 of Dad's. It was far cheaper to spend that $10,000 than doing an MBA.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. That is fair. I mean, it's interesting now to understand how expensive it was to build a website or an app 10 years ago versus now, because anybody can do it now.
Yes.
And it is so cheap.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. So anybody can start their own business. Yeah. But because of that, there are so many businesses that inevitably fail due to lack of, you know, I don't want to say ambition. I want to say just knowledge around what that business should be doing and the trajectory and the target addressable market, all of the above. Why do you think people fall into the trap of just starting a business? Do you think it's because people think it's really easy, or what do you reckon?
I don't know. I think there's founders are usually a special type of person. They get fixated on a problem. And regardless of deep down what they potentially may uncover or feel they know about a topic. So, you know, say you start a fitness marketplace now and you don't really go and research what's already there or what's come before. And so now whenever I try to start a new business or a new startup, I go out and actually find the graveyard of all the ones that came before me and then go reach out to all the founders and just go and ask them questions like, oh, hey, can I talk to you? And they always want to talk to you. It's like, oh, yeah, of course. I spent years like trying to solve this problem. I'd love to share all of my learnings with you, right?
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and so it's the same as like, you know, when I go and work for someone and, you know, do finance or whatever. And it's like, oh, we're going to this next stage. I'm like, cool, I haven't done that before. I'll just go and talk to a whole heap of different CFOs who are a few steps ahead of me.
Yeah,
and I always advise founders to do the same. It's like, okay, well, you're about to go into a Series A stage. You should go and talk to a couple of founders who have done that before.
So you can learn from their failures so you don't make them yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really clever.
Yeah. And so you know, I've done this quite a few, maybe 4 times now. And I reach out to people in like the US and Europe and have meetings with them all. And because people all over the world have already tried these things, right?
Yeah.
And usually you find out a lot of really interesting things. And so you can skip probably 6 or 12 months of hard learnings.
Yeah, right.
But I'm a person who learns by doing. I don't really learn by people telling me no. So then I'm like, cool, I'm just going to incorporate their learnings, but still try to do it. And then usually a couple of months in, I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see what they were saying.
Right.
And then that's when I make a choice. I'm quite a rational person and have been a very risk-averse person, spent the last 12 years trying to unlearn a lot of that risk adversity, try to take a bit more risk, and being around founders is helpful for that. But I think a lot of people, and I know this because I've done the same, is probably ignore some of the warning signs or some of the things that they learn along the way, where maybe this is not a viable business, or maybe you're just doing a different flavor of the same thing that's already there. Or I think the biggest thing is when in the startup world, there are lots of different types of startups and lots of different types of investors.
Yeah.
There are the investors that look for like transformational stuff like A16Z, Blackbird, SquarePeg. They're looking for quite like industry changing things. And then there are those who are looking for, or who can stomach more incremental change. Where maybe like, okay, well, we're just going to, I don't know, make it a little bit more efficient to do this or do that. And there are lots of different flavors. And so understanding which bucket you fit into, and then understanding what investors are appropriate according to that, I think is really important. I've only just appreciated that over the last couple of years, the more companies that I see, and you do see waves of similar innovations,
Yeah, right.
or similar incremental innovations or transformational innovations, sitting on the investor side and on the side that I sit. And so I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. We got this week. I've seen like 5 prop techs in this like specific vertical, right? So okay, cool. Like something must have happened that kind of spurred all this along.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to, I think what we're talking about is there are lots of warning signs, and if you go out and actually look for them, then you can probably find a lot of this stuff. And if you choose to ignore it, then that's at your peril. And I think it's maybe willfully ignoring it a lot of the time, because we do romanticize this idea of this hyper persistent founder that ignores what everybody else says, and it's innovation anyway. So like, who are they to say that this is a bad idea? Like, I could be the next Facebook, because that's what we like to tell each other.
Well, in my experience from helping founders raise capital, I've literally come in from the pitching stage, and I've had businesses pitch to me, and having to turn founders away from their capital raising journey within the businesses that I've worked for. It's not necessarily straightforward in the sense that it's a professional conversation that you're having. A lot of the time it really goes into that personal realm.
Yeah.
And it's really hard.
So the first step of, in my experience, the first kind of lens that investors are looking at you through when you come to them is this an investable founder? And that's the first one.
Yes.
And if you don't even meet that in their eyes, then they don't even really care what your business is. Not really.
Totally.
So that's like always going to be the first test. The problem is that's highly subjective, and there's always going to be lots of biases that creep into these sorts of things.
Oh, 100%.
And that, spurs along lots of conversation that we have at the moment around diversity of investment.
Yeah. I mean, you can't necessarily invest in something that you don't understand the problem. So I think that's a lot of the time female founders run into that issue when they're speaking to a lot of male investors, and they're trying to describe a problem that only relates to females. And sadly, because these male investors can't relate to the problem, they don't end up investing in a lot of these companies, which is such a shame. And it continues this cycle of investment going into, sadly, only male-founded companies, when you do see better returns from female-founded companies or mixed founder companies, which is a confusing thing, because if you, as an investor, were to look at the statistics and you know that you're statistically going to get a better return from a female-founded company, wouldn't you think that you'd be wanting to talk to more female founders? But it doesn't work that way, sadly.
The problem is the way I see it is that, I mean, I'm a data-driven guy.
Yeah.
So this is the way I like to see things. But and I tried to debunk this for many years, and I gave up a year ago. I actually did a LinkedIn post, and people quite liked it. It seems startup investing is actually not really that much of a statistical mathematics game.
Yeah.
It is a lot more emotional.
Totally.
So on the VC side, them finding money from LPs, it's a lot more emotional as well, because you're promising returns in 10 years' time with very little data and very little information about how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
You're just going to find amazing founders that do amazing things. Means that you're trying to attract people who are drawn to storytelling. Equally, as the VC, you're selling or you're buying off founders who are storytelling people. And so there's lots of storytelling, qualitative, emotional people transactions happening.
Yeah, right.
So in my opinion, when you try to bring data into it, it ignores what really happens. on a day-to-day basis. Whether an investor chooses to invest in someone is largely an emotional decision.
Yeah, right.
Because you've somehow got to bridge the gap that this founder, whatever they're presenting today in this meeting, is somehow going to pay off in 10 years' time. And they can bring lots of data in the pitch deck and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's an emotional...
It's like when your dad invested in you.
Yeah.
It was emotional.
Correct.
He was thinking.
Correct.
In 10 years,
100%.
might get this back.
100%. And I mean, these VCs, I'm pretty sure could say that it's data-driven as much as they want, but like the portfolio construction maybe, but how they actually select who goes in that portfolio is a largely emotional decision. Yeah, in my opinion.
I think it also comes back to what you were talking about before, is this commonality between founders and investors, which is risk. There's risk for both parties. And interestingly, what I've found with working with female founders is they're quite risk averse. And similarly, for female investors, they're very risk averse. And it's something that I always want to say to these female founders is you've got to take a risk to see a reward, because this is what these male founders are doing and they believe in themselves so much. So when they are pitching, the belief shines through and it transfers across to the investor, and then that emotional connection happens. And I sadly see these female founders who are like, oh, I don't want to let investors down, so I'm not going to put myself out there. For example, I've got a pitch night on Thursday this week and we put it out to the masses, and I've only had 2 female founders submit to pitch out of 25 people who have submitted applications. And it's such a shame, but it's just something that I see time and time again, is that these female founders don't want to put themselves out there as much. And I'm not sure where it comes from, but it is such a shame.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to talk to that, but that is what you're talking about, or what you were initially talking about, is what I call investor pleasing.
Okay.
And so I see this all the time in founders, and I always make them aware of it. And that's why when I work with founders, I get them to step back and reflect on what they really want and why and how they want to get there. Because what ends up happening from my experience is they're trying to build their business and their pitch deck and everything around what they think investors want to hear.
Right.
The problem is that most of the time that's not investable, because you don't come across as particularly authentic or particularly ambitious. Okay. And what you're actually doing is you're kind of masking potentially reducing your risk of rejection, because if they're rejecting kind of this mask or this facade that you have of like, oh, I think this is what investors want to invest in, and if they're rejecting that, then I think it probably protects people a lot more than if they're rejecting what they really think. And so most of the time the work that I do is the first couple of sessions I have is like, what do you really want this business to be? After they warm up to me a little bit, after a few sessions, usually they'll be like, oh, I actually really want, like, I think that this could be a $10 billion business and I really want to take over the world, and I think blah, 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 blah. And they actually like finally like tell me what they really think. I was like, so why don't you tell people? Like, I can't tell anyone that. They're going to think I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, that's actually investable. Yeah. But not this shitty story that you're telling me of like some kind of like mediocre, like safe story that everybody else is telling. It's like, that's not investable. No one wants to invest in like some safe, like, down the line kind of story. We want authentic, bold, kind of visionary people. That's who we invest in. And if you look at those who usually get most of the funding, it's people who say have a crazy vision for the world. Yeah. It does mean that they're putting everything on the line. And if people reject that, or if they fail, then like that's them failing publicly, right? On a very personal level. But that's what investors want to invest in. And honestly, as employees, you also want to follow a leader that's like that.
No doubt.
I've seen and worked around lots of different founders, and those founders that are the most bold and visionary are the ones that I want to get behind. But I do have to go in eyes wide open, realizing that it could all blow up along the way because they're going for all or nothing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the reality.
Yeah. I've worked in startups for, like the last 6 years and worked with founder CEOs. And it is exactly that. You're there because you believe in their vision and their mission, and you've got to be on board with it and believe that person is there to change the world in some way, however big or small. And I think that's what's really driven me as an employee to work really hard, because working at a startup isn't like working at any normal business because there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
You know, your founder is going to be contacting you with a weird idea at any time of the day, and it might be on a weekend. And unless you're passionate about what they are building, you're not going to want to answer that text at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. You're not going to want to answer their phone call at all hours of the evening to help them out with something that only you know how to do, because that founder is believing in their team, and they have to be so selective about who they are choosing to be in that team, because every single employee matters so much because they have such a finite amount of funding, unless, you know, they're somehow getting this huge funding. But a lot of businesses aren't, sadly. And I think that that's something I see time and time again with founders too, is that their main mistakes that they make when building the business is hiring the wrong people.
Yeah. So I see this all the time as well. It's hiring or getting people involved that are the closest or the easiest. It's like, I know this person through that, or they contacted me, or I used to work with them. I just think that that's just it's wrong. I always advocate for running a process and finding the best person, and also not sugarcoating what you're doing. Someone told me the other day the story about the first North Pole expedition. I don't know, hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe in England, and whoever was leading the expedition wanted to recruit people for it. And so he put an ad in the newspaper saying something like, you know, go to the North Pole, you might die, don't have much food, blah blah blah. Like if you want to explore and you want to challenge and you're not scared of, like, you know, dying, then like contact me, something like that way. And then got like 10 crazy people that contacted them. And funnily enough, so apparently call centers also do the same thing, because they used to have really, really high turnover because they sell the dream, and then people turn up and realize actually this is a really hard kind of job. And so some of the smart ones apparently have stopped trying to put this, like, you know, marketing spin on everything and just saying like, this is a hard job, and, you know, like people are going to yell at you and blah, blah, blah. And if you're still up for it, then apply. And they lowered their employee turnover a lot.
That's actually really good advice, and something that I wish I knew earlier, because we had that at the last business I worked at. Our customer service rep always quit because they were just getting abused every day, and they didn't realize. And in the job ad, you're trying to sell this like beautiful job where you're just helping people every day, and it's not the case. People are angry all the time. Especially
when you're in customer service, all you kind of see is like the angry people.
The nice people.
I worked in debt collection. My first ever job out of uni was outbound credit card collection for a bank.
Are you okay?
Yeah, it was like, I learned so much about human psychology and financial stress and all these sorts of things.
How awful.
But so that's where I learned, like, you as customer success, you kind of only see like the edge cases or the bad things, and it feels like everything's like always falling apart.
Yeah,
and so you do need to like remind them, hey, like this is actually only like 1% of like all the users on the platform, and probably share some more like good stories with them and stuff.
So it feels like psychology is like really front of mind for you in everything that you do. Why is that?
I've always been interested in psychology, but the last few years, so COVID happened. I got sciatica, chronic sciatica.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't walk twice, actually. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was the first time that I was early 30s, 31 or 30. And I was like, oh, shit, I actually need to like start looking after my health. Up until then, I'd been really like very harsh on my body. And I was like, okay, I need to look after myself, and started looking after my physical health, and then started looking after my mental health. Only 2 years ago, started seeing a psychologist. And radically it's changed my life, It's amazing. And so the more I learn about psychology and myself and all these things, the healthier I get. But also the more that I remove from my life of all these things in society that we have. Like I haven't drunk alcohol for 3 years, cigarettes, drugs, 3 years. I just quit caffeine. I just basically bricked my phone. So I put parental lock on my phone. So I can't access the internet. I can't access social media, anything. I can only get like maps and my like banking.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's like the more I remove from my life, and then started gardening a couple of years ago, then the happier I get.
Yeah, right.
And so one of those things, so I got diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago, and then started to learn about this concept called rejection sensitivity, which is people, especially with ADHD, are prone to it apparently, where you're kind of told your whole life, hey, like be quiet, like sit down, like you're too this, you're too that. And so you kind of get quite sensitive to getting rejected.
Right.
And so you try to please people more. So then it kind of influences your behavior and how you mask and project and all this sort of stuff. And so I started to realize, I've been doing all these things maybe more to please other people or to stop them judging me or rejecting me. So things around like always wanting the promotion, getting a better title or a new car, or the big thing is like getting founders praise. Like I always want the founder to say that I've done good work, but founders rarely ever say that.
I literally feel like I'm looking in a mirror right now when you're saying this. I'm like, oh gosh, where's my diagnoses?
Yeah, and so then I started to go, okay, I need to like improve my mental health, and I'm going to stop doing this rat race thing where I just want more money and a better title. And that was why I started my own business. It was part of this, to kind of remove myself from it. And then the more I've learned about it, the more I've seen in other people. It's like, okay, cool. Like it looks like, and I try not to like diagnose other people or all this sort of stuff. But it's like, it looks like, I won't say it to people, but like, based on that story that you're trying to tell, like investors, it looks like you're just trying to please them, and you're actually trying to mask what you really want to say because you're scared of being rejected. It's like, okay. And then once they finally build their trust, then they tell me what they really want. And it's like, okay, then.
Right.
Why don't you just say that? And then they start saying it, and all of a sudden investors want to like engage with them, right? Because
almost
they can
like
see
a
the
business
authenticity.
psychologist.
Yeah, I do. A lot of my work is just having difficult conversations with founders.
Yeah, right.
It's like, hey, do you think that employee really is the best person for that job? Or, I can see that you have tension with your founder, like your co-founder. Yeah. Like, are you guys talking properly? Like, are you communicating about how, in your personal life and that sort of stuff? Like, are you seeing a psychologist? Like, it's healthy for you to see a psychologist. Like, you're under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. One of the things I read in a book, a founder mental health book, is a startup is usually a reflection of a founder's unresolved like mental health issues, right?
Oh my goodness.
These sorts of things. So I try to, no longer do I try, for a while I was trying to like directly say these things, but now I try to emulate based on like leading by example. So I'll communicate a lot about my mental health journey. So on like LinkedIn, I talk a lot about having ADHD or like, disconnecting or setting boundaries with work. I wasn't setting boundaries with work.
Yeah.
I wasn't communicating what I wasn't good at and all these things because I was this fear of being rejected. And then once I started saying, hey, like I'm not going to have any work-related stuff on my phone.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my mental health started improving and no one knew, no one cared. Like I thought that I was like this all important person that I had to reply to Slack messages and emails like instantly, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise everyone would know. Like no one knew, no one ever knew, which was very funny. Right. So it was all in my head and then realized like in all these past jobs that I've had that, actually I was unhappy. I had all these boundaries and values and stuff that I didn't know or wasn't communicating because I was too scared of being rejected. And then I'd get really annoyed at work and my coworkers, and then I'd take it out on them and then usually quit and be unhappy. And then actually it's on me because I haven't even been communicating that I don't like doing this job or that I'm not good at this or that I feel really insecure in this situation or blah, 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 because I've just grown up in this. I grew up on a farm. And I went to boarding school for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I just grew up in this hyper-masculine culture where, like, you just had to suck everything up. Like, you're not allowed to have emotion. You're not allowed to have these conversations.
Totally.
And so I never learned. And so I'm learning now at, like, early, like, mid-30s. I'm only just starting to connect with my emotions. Like, I didn't know that being angry is healthy and being sad is so healthy and it's good. And I've only just learned this in the last 6 months.
It is a wildly unfair advantage that women have is that we have our mental health. And I often say that as I say, sure, there's like a lot of advantages to being a man, but at least I have my mental health.
Yes.
And I can talk to my friends and no one's going to judge me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to not do something because I'm afraid someone's going to call me gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just wild.
Yeah. So, so with founders, I communicate a lot of this stuff, right? It's like, I'm not feeling very good today. And like, I'm just going to take the day off rather than like try to pretend or, I went and saw my psychologist the other day and she was suggesting like, have you thought about this or whatever? Or, I just communicate all these little things, but not in a confrontational way or anything, just like to show, one of the guys I work with broke up with his partner the other day. And he's like, I feel sad. I'm just going to work more. I was like, no, it's okay to feel sad. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to work more. If you want to go home and like just relax, do it. We've got this. It's okay. He's like, no, I just need to get into work. I was like, no, it's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah. So you're going to do a bad job. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's interesting that the psychology part and particularly working with founders I was working with founders as a campaign manager for equity crowdfunding raises for over 3 years. And we would always joke that we were the part-time psychologists for the founders because you are riding this emotional journey with them. And we'd only be working with them for 3 or 4 months, but you became so close with them all the time. And often they would take their emotions out on you because you were the closest one to them during that capital raising process. And if something wasn't going well, they needed somebody to take their frustrations out on, and then you'd have to talk them off the ledge, make them feel better, and, understand their psychology and where they're coming from and not take it personally. And it took a particular kind of person to be a campaign manager. And a lot of people quit and hated it because they didn't realize that you are basically their psychologist.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard in really high pressure environments where like these are make or break situations usually. Like debt collection was the same, right? Like these are people in extreme financial distress and founders hopefully are not in that circumstance when they're raising capital. But they're acutely aware of the ramifications if this doesn't work right. And usually, they are projecting and taking out like things that are out of your control if like investors aren't responding positively to their capital raise. Like obviously, as long as you've done everything on your side, like that's not really your fault. But usually, you're probably the people that are closest that they can take it out on, right? And it's hard to not take that personally, but
totally.
If you've been on both sides, it's a lot easier to understand and not take personally, right? If you've worked in-house for a startup and then you've worked on the capital raising side and you've kind of seen enough of it, you're like, okay, cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think a large part of my role as well was marketing, and a lot of marketing is understanding the psyche of the audience that you're trying to affect.
Yeah.
So trying to explain to somebody who's never worked in a marketing role before that, we're trying all of these different angles to try and affect somebody's emotional response or logical response in a certain way, and it's just not resonating. That's a really difficult conversation to have. So saying to a founder, the market isn't accepting your offer, they're not interested, there's nothing more we can do, that is such a difficult conversation.
Yeah. And that's what most founders end up discovering through capital raising, right? Whether they're doing it themselves or through a platform or, working with me. At the end of the day, most capital raises are not successful. And so most of it is learning that for whatever reason, this isn't resonated and people are not going to invest or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because that can feel quite personal, right?
On the worst end of the spectrum, we went through a really big streak of successful capital raises, success after success after success, and then you have one failure.
Oh, yeah.
And that founder takes it so personally, and they say, why wasn't mine working? And how do you say, because nobody thinks this is investable, nobody thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a harsh reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's very hard. I've been working closely with a much more sales orientated tech company recently, and like just watching the sales team, like they just go through this every week, right? Like one week they could be having a really good streak, and then the next week they're not. But they've learned over time that this is part of like sales and. You've got to be so good with rejection if you're in sales. Correct.
I don't have that in me.
Yes.
I just can't imagine being in sales for that purpose.
Yes. I think the difficult bit is that, there are a few things in that is like rejection is about the other person, not about you, right? So the reason why they're rejecting you is because it has to do with them. So it's like, they don't think this is a good investment because of life experiences that they've had, right?
Sure.
Usually. And so that's about them, not about you. There's all these little things where once you start pulling away, that it's like you can either look at it as a victim or you can kind of flip it and say, okay, well, like this wasn't the time, but that's okay. And, you can still have emotions attached to it and that's good. Like that's healthy. And, feel hurt and upset and sad and angry and like all that, like that's okay.
Yeah.
But also not go into this deep spiral and, just realize that like rejection is part of life and you can't take it out on the investors just because for whatever reason they don't want to buy what you're selling.
For sure. Or whoever's trying to help you raise capital at the end of the day.
Yes, which unfortunately is the reality of how most founders do. And we have a culture of dealing with investor rejection through taking it out on the investors. Like LinkedIn is just full of it, right? And in some cases it's justified, but I can almost guarantee that in most cases it's not. In most cases, you're just not selling something that they want to buy, or you're not doing it in a way that resonates with them, and that's on you. You're going to them trying to get money. And so you need to understand what they want. And if you're not doing that work and you're not trying, then, that's on you. But also they don't owe you anything and they don't have to invest, and like, that's okay.
Totally.
So like, that's life. No one owes you anything.
Yeah.
Sadly.
It's interesting what you say about LinkedIn and, what people are posting now. It's become so hyper personal now.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the point of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it probably goes to what you're saying that, founders should be being themselves and being authentic. But when does being authentic take a turn? In terms of like, I look at a lot of the posts that I'm seeing on LinkedIn now and it will be, somebody at like Burning Man. I'm like, how is this like, how is this related to business? I'd love to know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's, I think probably comes back to like, we all have different channels or different ways of communicating to the world. And like, I don't use Instagram. I've never really used it. I don't really understand it. Like, it's just not something that like I understand. I never use TikTok. I used to use Facebook.
I think I'm too old
in
for
my
TikTok.
teens. Yeah.
Okay.
I just really just never touch it because I know that it will be addictive.
Yeah, same.
I have a very addictive personality. I'm like, I just stay the fuck away from it.
100%.
Yeah. And LinkedIn, and I fell into this trap, and I've intentionally stopped using it recently. But, it's easy to play this vanity game and feel like all these people are your friends, and like this is like where all the smart people hang out and all this sort of stuff. And, but it's just like Instagram, it's just like Facebook, it's just like TikTok. It's like just a polished version of whatever people want to show you for whatever agenda they're trying to serve, right? And I actually tell new investors this, like new VCs as well as like founders and other people who want to be like known on LinkedIn or whatever it is.
Get a top voice badge.
Yeah, it's like, I got to do the marketing game to be a good VC or to be a good founder. It's like, no, actually you don't. Like there are a whole heap of investors and founders out there that don't do that, and that really resonates with them. And there are some that do that. But you, again, need to come back to reflecting on who you are and what your boundaries are and how you want to get there and stuff, to go like, is this going to lean into what I'm good at and what my strengths are? Or is this going to feel like pulling teeth and I'm going to hate myself for it? I'm playing the vanity game because like LinkedIn is a soulless place, not particularly interesting. But we make it look like everything's happening on LinkedIn because it serves our own purpose, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it obviously serves the purpose of LinkedIn to make it look more like things are happening there. But not really. And there are all these investors out there who say like, if a founder has time to be posting on LinkedIn, then they probably don't have a very good business, and they actually have a negative view. So there are investors are as diverse as people because they are people, and they all have different experiences and opinions and all that sort of stuff. And so trying to generalize investors by going, I need to play the public game to get noticed by investors is just like bullshit, right? It's like, okay, like, yeah, there's a percentage of investors and founders that do that really well, that like each other, and that but then there's all these other people who are not like that, and they operate perfectly fine, and they actually respect each other for not sitting on LinkedIn or turning up to events or whatever. And
the awards circuit.
Yeah.
Oh.
And like, it's okay if that's like your thing and it works for you, like great.
Yeah.
But like, again, like reflect and go, who am I and what are my strengths, and lean into that rather than going, oh, well, I see like this founder raised money because they were tweeting lots and this investor found them on there and therefore that's the way I've got to do it. It's like, no, that's bullshit, right? Like, so there are lots of different pathways, and again, it keeps coming back to like, what pathway do you want to go down and why, and lean into that for the right reasons, rather than just because you think that that's like the way to success, or like, it's what investors want. People, investor pleasing, right? Like, again, coming back to this investor pleasing.
So how would you advise founders to actually find investors and locate them if they're not on a public platform per se?
Like for investment?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always the only way that I ever advise warm introductions, always warm introductions.
It's who you know.
Not anything else. Don't cold emails. Yes, there are stories out there of cold emails working. Yes, of course there are. There's exceptions to every rule. But as a general rule, they're not worth your time. Even more today, like with all of these annoying AI solutions out there of like, hey, give us 5 or 10 grand. We'll go and put you on a drip cold campaign to all these investors and we'll get you in front of them. Like, it just doesn't work. Problem is that these investors are receiving more of this stuff than ever before.
Yeah.
And it's really high quality, and it's really hard to tell what's AI generated and not. And so they're just falling back to what they're comfortable with, and that is relationships.
Yeah, right.
And so again, like even more today than ever before, is like the bar has risen, and warm introductions are even more important than they ever have been, in my opinion. And so you need to do the work.
Yeah.
Like it's hard work. Yes, it is. Yes, that's part of the game. Like, who cares? Shut up, go and do it. Like, find the warm introduction. And if you don't know someone who knows that investor, then be smart about it. I don't know. Find out, are they going to be at this event? Great. Go turn up to that event.
Yeah.
Are they going to be at a fundraiser event or something? Great. Go buy a ticket and turn up to that. Or maybe they've invested in a founder that you could probably get in front of. Great. Then go and talk to that founder and then get them introduce you. Like, build a relationship first. Like, you have to do the work because you're trying to essentially shortcut years or months worth of relationship building by leveraging someone else's relationship. Otherwise, you may have to build that relationship over time. Now, there are always exceptions to all these rules, right? Like, there are lots of investors who sit on the sidelines who are looking for diamonds in the rough, and they don't have the resources or whatever it is to play the game that all the big guys play, because they have proper marketing teams and teams of people who can scale through all these relationships and emails and all this sort of stuff. And so they will take these calls. So there's always exceptions, but as a general rule, like, just don't shortcut the work. Like, you have to do the work. And again, and it comes back to, like, I always also say is, like, you can't, like, just go and pay someone like an advisor and go, cool, well, I'm going to pay you 10% to, like, introduce me to these investors. Like, it just, every time I've heard a founder do that, I've almost never heard anybody have success with it or say that it was worth it, because these advisors who sell introductions, they're known for selling introductions.
For sure.
And investors don't really respect them because of it.
Yeah.
And so an introduction from them usually damages the relationship.
Yeah.
And so I say that, like, advisor introductions are usually at the bottom of the investor warm introduction hierarchy. And that's just the reality.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And I know you got 1,000 other things to do, but you're choosing to play in this game, and, like, you just got to own it and say, okay, that's the reality, and go do it.
So true. I think that sometimes people think that it is easier than it actually is to raise capital. When I was working for an equity crowdfunding platform, we had a really large email database of 180,000 people. So a lot of founders would come to us and they say, how many investors usually come from your database? And I'd say, I really can't answer that, because every business is different and our audience reacts differently to each individual one. We can't tell you if they're going to find your business interesting. So I'm not going to put these false ideas in your head that that's it. We can put you in front of them, sure. We can help you with your marketing, sure. But it all depends on how much you can sell your story.
Yeah.
Like, the storytelling element of it is so incredibly important. And that narrative is something that I think a lot of founders forget a lot of the time. And I think as well, if you're going to, like, an angel network, for example, you're getting in front of a syndicate perhaps. In that sense, you've got to sell the story, you've got to sell the dream to people, and people have got to understand it before they're ever going to invest. Yeah. So
that is the problem. Well, and that's why I ask founders to reflect on what kind of, first themselves and then the business and then the investors. And it's like, okay, well, what kind of investors do you think suit you? Because I've written articles about this, because the investor landscape is incredibly diverse, and you really need to understand what investors are going to suit you. I call it the IIP. I sold this off the ICP, the ideal customer profile for sales. IIP is your ideal investor profile.
Love it.
And so it's going, okay, well, what investors are likely to resonate with your story and your business and you as a founder, and find you investable, and then lean into that and try to find them, rather than scattergunning and just go, every investor is the same. I'm just going to reach out to every investor. How do I get in front of angels and angel syndicates and VCs, and, like, large VCs and small VCs PEs and family offices. I mean, the big one I get is like, oh, I just need introduction to the family office. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You need to take a step back and go, what investors are suitable for the pathway that I'm choosing and who I am as a founder and all this sort of stuff and the market conditions that we're operating in and blah, blah, blah. And then you need to go and go after those investors with a very personalized, targeted message that makes sense to them rather than something that's generalized for all of them. Because if it's generalized for all of them, it probably means it's going to appeal to none of them, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And the problem with those platforms, in my opinion, from my experience, is that you remove that relationship element. And so much of the early stage investing is about relationship. And when you create more distance between the founder and the investor, then that ability to connect, build a relationship, and that emotional aspect of early stage startup investing gets more and more difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
The problem is there's not many metrics to invest on. And so when you're trying to sell it like an ASX listing, it's just not the same as an ASX listing.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, though public investment markets are not doing particularly well in terms of like the trajectory at the moment. You're seeing a lot more people get involved in private investments now, which is an exciting time, I think, in Australia. And it's a really huge opportunity for these small businesses. I know that there isn't a whole heap of money floating around, but that's just in general and looking at the macroeconomic landscape. How do you think that, founders can learn from that and grow their story? Because a lot of the time investors are saying, what's your exit strategy? And going to IPO is perhaps not even achievable for a lot of these businesses.
Yeah. So the part of the market that I work in, so I work in wholesale early stage investing. So I don't work in retail facing, that sort of stuff. So in the wholesale early stage startup space, as a general rule, if they're asking you what your exit strategy is, then I'll be concerned about and I'd question how much experience they have in investing in that area.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's usually a bit of a red flag for me. Usually that probably means that they come from maybe the PE world, maybe they're used to later stage investing, maybe they come from public markets, ASX type stuff, or maybe they've just like Googled or they've done some ChatGPT and that's one of the questions that comes up.
When I worked in retail investment, that was a very common question.
Yes. Because that's what Google says, question. Right? Like it's like just that's what you should ask. Or when you've seen enough investor conversations, usually that question doesn't get asked. It usually just gets asked by angels who are less experienced, from my experience.
Totally.
So that's usually like a bit of a red flag for me. If they ask that, then I'd coach founders. I'm like, okay, well, you actually need to ask them like how much investing have they done in startup space and do they understand what they're investing in here? And make sure that they do and make sure that you're aligned because if you're not having a potential hostile investor on your cap table is not a good thing. If they think they're getting an exit in 3 to 5 years and actually this is more like a 10-year thing and plus also the likelihood of this failing is very high. If you don't properly communicate that, then in 3 years' time, this person could become very difficult.
Totally.
So you need to manage these expectations and be very clear.
Yeah.
So that's usually what I think about that. Because there are lots of different
risk warning.
Yeah, and there are so many different things that can eventuate. But usually when that question would get asked, but I think investors ask that in a lot more intelligent way these days. It's more like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Or like, how persistent are you with this venture, right?
Sure.
Or some of the smart ways, like some of the really big guys would ask is probably if a competitor came and offered you $500 million in 3 years' time, would you take it? That's how they ask your exit strategy question in an intelligent way.
I love that.
Yeah. Because they just want to know, like, are you the type of founder that's so like persistent, so like you're so fixated on this that you're going to like run this into the ground and like either you're going to make it and you're going to exit in 10 or 15 years at an IPO, whatever, or you don't. But they need you to go for the option where you do all or nothing because that's really the only viable option for their portfolio in the way that they've constructed their returns.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's also a red flag if somebody's saying, what's my projected return on investment?
Yes.
So concerning.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. Yeah, again, it's
Because if you're going to tell them a projected return on investment when your early stage is significantly speculative and therefore misleading,
yeah,
and if they're going to believe that, you've got to think this person has no idea what's going on.
yeah. They're just used to a different type of investing, right?
Sure.
But even that type of investing, it's a hard question to answer. I mean, you can't answer that in any kind of investing. And when somebody does have a guaranteed or a very confident, that's usually the sign of like a scam or a Ponzi scheme or something. Yeah. So the only way you could ever really express that, my understanding, is you just say our target return on investment, or IRR, would be 20%, 20 to 5% over the next 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And like managed funds and listed funds and stuff, they do that.
Yeah.
But again, they have to be very careful, like super funds. They have to be very careful about how they communicate that.
Totally.
Because nobody can guarantee a return.
Past performance is not a correct indicator of future performance.
Yeah. And like genuinely, you really do have to be careful because this is actually a regulated space, right?
Yeah,
you're selling a financial
100%.
product. Even if you're just a founder, like you are still like selling a financial product to investors, and you have to be aware of like, is this a retail or wholesale investor? And what are my obligations for each of them? Because
Totally.
like you are still regulated.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And so, for example, like I'm regulated because I'm offering
Financial advice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
still, whilst I don't deal directly with investors, I never ever get involved in investor conversations. I am assisting in capital raise, and so I am a regulated like person. Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So one question I always ask people when they come on the podcast is, what is the biggest mistake that you have made that you have learned the most from?
I've made so many. I always make mistakes.
But I do think that they are so crucial to people's success
Yeah.
and their journey as a whole.
But I can't answer that. Like I've made so many mistakes. I make so many mistakes every day, like every week, every month, every year, like that they're all like transformational.
I think there's a great mentality for startups, which is fail fast to scale fast.
Yeah.
Because if you're not failing, you're not learning
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah. As always, it depends on what context you're talking about that in. I work a lot with deep tech and medical device companies, and
Oh, okay.
So-
People's lives are on the line. I don't think we could be
so
failing
yeah,
at that point.
like that. But even within that context, actually, like you need to run your operations more like a software company, but then the R&D and product development stuff needs to run a lot more conservatively. Problem is running those two in different cultures is very difficult in the same organization.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, one of the most impactful things anyone ever said to me, and it was when it was when I was at Rainbow Serpent many years ago, 10 years ago.
Classic.
Yeah.
Good.
A great conversation. And I was complaining about, this guy was complaining about like the education system. And so I grew up in the country and I grew up, liberal. And then my reaction was, okay, well, what's your solution then? Like, if you're gonna complain that something's wrong, like what's your solution?
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't need to have the solution to acknowledge that there's a problem. And that really dramatically impacted how I look at the world and how I behave. Another one was Jesse Wu said a few years ago to me that life is permissionless. Like all these things that you think that like all these constraints and all these things that you think that you need to live by are actually usually just fabricated like in your head by society and that sort of stuff. But actually predominantly life is permissionless, except for a couple of laws and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that again really unlocked a whole heap of how I behave. And I think the really good founders kind of realize that.
Yeah.
And they know that. Maybe they only appreciate that in certain parts of their behavior or their life. But yeah, that one's really helped.
Yeah, I guess 'cause things are only true because as a group we believe them to be true. Like, cash only has a value because we believe that it has a value.
Yeah. Or even just like being a good employee means like staying lots of years and at a company and saying yes and blah, blah, blah. And I punished myself for a long time because, I only keep jobs maximum 2 years, usually 1.5 years. Turns out it's because I have ADHD and I can't like really hold down like continuous jobs for long periods of time. And so I punished myself for a long time thinking that like, well, I'm just a really bad employee, but good employees like should just always say yes and not express like that they don't like this or they don't want to do this or I'm not good at this or blah, blah, blah. And then realize, this is actually all constructed in my head. That's not true.
Yeah. And when you're speaking to a new employer and they say, oh, you've only been here for a year or two, I'm like, I'm a Sagittarius. I can't commit. What do you mean? That's ridiculous.
Well, star signs, yes.
What do you mean?
No, we won't.
I'm not that girl. I'm not that girl. But yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. That's really, really solid advice. I think probably a great place for us to wind up because I do think I could talk to you all day. And it's been so wonderful talking to you and hearing your insights. And I think a lot of people will take away some really, really good tips from you. I'll pop in the show notes where they could reach out to you as well. And thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody loves this episode as much as I've loved recording it with you.
Thanks for having me.
Come on.